Morning, everyone. Feels good to be here. Thank you all for coming. There are, on Zoom, there's a couple of new people that have never been in this church before. Some friends that I asked to come. There's a few of them here. Should we give them a little welcome? One said, if I knew you were speaking at a church, I'd probably be home, but as it was a bait and switch thing, so. Really good people. And thank you, Walt, and all the people that make this possible. I brought a lot of stuff here. It looks like there was a time for 35 years of my life where I would do 75-minute lectures and never had any notes. That's in the past. A couple weeks ago, as a matter of fact, I found a screwdriver in my refrigerator. I don't know what that means, but it's not a good sign. I live with my dog Lefty, and so I said, Lefty, come here a minute now. What do you know about this? And he grabbed it out of my hand and started chewing on the wooden handle. I said, you're guilty. So anyhow, I have the tradition in this church for the few people that haven't been here is usually the message starts with some humor. The bar's not very high on this. So the opening song I think fits right in with this little bit of humor with emphasis on the word little. So it's got to be some church humor, so this is what I selected. There was this elderly couple, been married for 50 years. They never really got along terribly well. They were arguing and bickering, etc. That sounds familiar. But they were trying to plan their 50th wedding anniversary, and they just couldn't even get together on anything. Argue, no. So they saw this tour to the Holy Land advertised, and they said, let's try it. So they're going to go to the Holy Land. So they went to the Holy Land. And by the way, this couple lived in New York City. And they got there, and on one of the first tours, the husband had a massive heart attack and died. That's not the funny part. But anyhow, so the coroner came and took him away. And the next day, the wife went to the coroner's office, and she says, what are my options? Says, well, we can bury your husband here in the Holy Land and give him a nice plaque and flowers, at least for the first week, for $400. And she said, well, we live in New York. He said, to get the body back to New York and to do all that, it's going to cost between $9,000 and $10,000. She said, I think the New York option sounds the best. And he goes, what, really? She said, isn't there some story that a guy around these parts a long time ago, about 2,000 years, got hung up on a cross and died, and then they took and put him in a cave and put a big stone in front of the cave, and a couple of days later he came back to life and was walking around and talking to people? I can't take that chance. New York. So anyhow, today, let's see, I'm going to talk about some things that everyone in this room will be able to relate to, I promise. Because I'm going to talk about, I might have time to get pretty close there. I'm going to talk about families, and I'm going to talk about forgiveness and love, and I'm going to talk about, when I was going to church, I ended going to church in third grade at Bethel Lutheran Church in Madison, Wisconsin, and for those of you that have read a couple of books that I've written, I got kicked out of Sunday school in third grade at Bethel Lutheran Church because I thought it was funny and cute, but they didn't. I had a couple of small black cat firecrackers, twisted the fuses together. You know, my brother and I threw them at each other, and I lit it and threw it under the table in Sunday school. And the first one went off, and the Sunday school teacher started screaming, you know, and then another one had blown over to this side of the room, this side, and so there were 3 firecrackers that went off. She was screaming, and there was a small room, a lot of smoke. Somebody opened the door. Somebody pulled the fire alarm because all this, you know, so it was a 4-alarm fire. They said, Howie, I think you need to go and think about what you've done for about 1 year. And I never went back, you know. I became very, and my mother said, oh my God, Howard, I've told you, don't, you know, what will other people think? What are they going to say? What are Grandma and Grandpa's going to say? All my 3 brothers go to this same church. I was confirmed by the minister. It was a family crisis. But anyhow, my dad said, hey, that's great. Now we can go hunting and fishing while everybody else is at church, because he was an atheist. So that's a little family background on me. I'm going to talk about forgiveness. I'm going to talk about resentment and hate, and I'm going to talk about surviving great loss and sadness. And I promise we'll be done by the time the Packers kick off tonight at 7 o'clock. So anyhow, with families, I'll start out that with the first 12 years of my life, the family extended family that I was in, there's Grandma and Grandpa out on the east side, all my 3 uncles and my mother. The sister were, you know, born and raised, or not born and raised, but at least raised here in Madison, went to East High School, etc. You know, they're all of the adults went through the Depression and World War II, got together, had a bunch of kids, and my family was great. It was wonderful. I couldn't ask for a better family. Christmas Eve, always everybody together. There was 23, 24 of us, including all the cousins, grandpa and grandma, husbands and wives. Easter, all together. Thanksgiving, all together. Birthday parties, all together. Tenney Park, Vilas Park, big picnics, water skiing, enough people to play softball, confirmations. Then it all ended. Because I remember my mother on the phone, I could recognize my uncle's voice. It was loud, it was excitable, and she was listening, and then she said, I don't want to get involved. A couple hours later, the other uncle called, and he kind of the same thing. So what happened is 2 of my uncles went into business together, and you can guess what happened. You stole some money, you cheated, you lied, and the 2 uncles went to war. And then my 3rd uncle joined one of them and formed an alliance. My grandparents weren't strong enough as leaders of the family to help them get through their disagreements, which, now these are Norwegian Lutheran people. Once they get their mind made up, it pretty much stays there. It crystallized into hatred. And they took it to their graves. They never made peace. 40, 50 years, whatever it is, they never made peace. The wives lined up behind their husbands. The children lined up behind their parents. Grandma and Grandpa, instead of having them all there on Sunday nights, oftentimes sat there by themselves waiting for somebody to come. The cousins, some of my best, you know, I had 2 really good friends, cousins. We went fishing. That ended. Slowly, at first, and then it was over the family evaporated in the vapor of hate. It was so bad that I remember my mother, who was very concerned about what will other people think. When I was going to go to one of my cousin's house and stay overnight, she said, "Don't tell anybody you're doing that, because then they'll think we're taking sides." You know? So then I had to lie and keep secrets. So that's a family that didn't work. It worked for a long time until the hate set in. One of the things that I didn't learn in my short tenure, my short stay at Sunday school, I knew I was supposed to forgive. God wanted me to forgive. You'll feel better if you forgive. You need to forgive because it's in the Bible. But you know that what they forgot to say? Tell me. How do you do that? How do you forgive? Say, okay. I would say in my prayers, I forgive you, uncles. But it came back. And then if I was mad at somebody, I would forgive them just by trying to change the way I was thinking about it. But it always came back. And as an adult, a girlfriend would leave me. That I had to pray on that many times. So I would say, forgive them, forgive me. The resentment, the anger always came back. So I didn't know how to do that. I have stumbled on a process that works for me. And probably some of the most rewarding experiences in my life have come from forgiveness, from the heart, from the Spirit, not because I think I'm supposed to or somebody else wants me to. It's because I've found that forgiving winds up, and I'm going to read a short part out of this book that I wrote a couple years ago. It's actually saved my life one time. I'll talk to you about that later. So, the title of my talk is Forgiveness is a Choice. And so is hatred and harboring resentments. It's a choice. And there is a way out. As a matter of fact, at the University of Wisconsin here in Madison, in the psychology department, about 30 years ago, they started a program on forgiveness. Scientifically studied it on how people felt after they forgave, as opposed to holding on to that hatred. And the population of people that they used were those that had anger disorders. And the data is very clear. The people that had anger disorders, they had two groups. One went through the process developed at the University of Wisconsin by a guy named Robert Enright, PhD, psychology. And those that didn't gathered the data. It's an enormous relief. That tells me that the Spirit of God that dwells within me, I believe, encourages us to love and connect. It doesn't encourage us to judge, hate, and think we're separate from. And the reason why hate hurts so much when it's present, two things. If you don't know how to get rid of it, you just either have to endure it or pass it on. If you do know how to get rid of it, it is such an amazing relief on how to be shed of that hate and feel connection at the level of spirit with the person that you used to despise. A short reading out of this book. By the way, I've left 5 copies of this book on that back table. And the money that comes from, if anybody wants to buy this book, you can get it on Amazon or you can get it at the table. And those books back there, there's an envelope. The money will go to the youth group here that's going to visit South Dakota Reservation. Is that Pine Ridge Reservation? That's where it's going to. So we could start some seed money for the, and we saw in Australia, if they can do it in Australia, we can do it in South Dakota. That's what this movement is for. So there's 5 books back there. Or you can get them on Amazon also. So that's how our family kind of disintegrated. I have 3 sisters. One and her husband and children live in the Boston area. Another one lives in the Los Angeles area, and another one lives here in Madison, and I have a brother that lives in Madison. So that's the segue into something that happened to me this past week. And I am so appreciative of being able to stand up here and talk about this, because if I hadn't prepared this stuff, which I haven't looked at yet, and I probably won't for the next 20 minutes, what happened to me Wednesday through yesterday, and I'm still basking in the glow of it, happened because I was preparing for this talk on forgiveness and hate and how to forgive. So, I have a brother. There's 5 children, three sisters and a brother. The brother is 4 years older than me, lives in Madison, and a great separation happened in our family, of course, but anybody that's lived in this country knows there's a great separation going on here, right now. And it's probably as distinct and solidified as the separations of my uncles. By the way, I'm just going to put a comma there, or a semicolon, and tell you that the last person standing out of the aunts and uncles, etc., the last person standing was in the Don and Marilyn Anderson Hospice Center out on Sherrill Parkway. 95 years old. I visited with him, and this man he wasn't short on courage and bravery. He proved that in World War II in the Battle of the Bulge for an event of valor beyond the call of duty, for which he was awarded the Silver Star. I went there and, he knew he had days, weeks, maybe. And I didn't say anything, but what went through my mind, I didn't say anything because it would have been too mean, to ask him how many times back in that critical moment, 50 years ago, when you and your brother clashed, how many times do you regret not going back and trying to make peace? It has to be hundreds. Many times. And now it's too late. He's out of time. Pride, ego, self-righteousness overwhelmed what I'm sure was visiting him many times. And that is that still small voice that's mentioned in the Bible. God talking to Ezekiel. Hey, just get over it. Make some peace. You need some words? How about, we've been at war. We've been at peace. I like peace better. You want to get together and try to get back where we were? Our spouses are suffering. Our children are suffering. The hate that we built has become metastatic. It's affected everyone. 25 people, their lives. I don't have any cousins to play with anymore. The wives didn't play bridge anymore. We didn't have Christmas Eve together anymore. but they still all went to Bethel Lutheran Church. One sat over here, one sat in that corner, another sat up here. Our family didn't go much because my dad and I were out in the woods. And my mother didn't drive back. You know, believe it or not, women didn't drive back then much, back in the 50s and 60s, but she didn't go. So they were in the same building, and this is important. Another thing we did here this morning is we said the Lord's Prayer. Somewhere about in the middle of that prayer, it says, a prayer to God, God, grant me, forgive me for my sins, as I'm forgiving other people, for those who have sinned against me. Forgive me for my, nowhere in there does it say, God, forgive me for my sins, but I reserve the right to selectively hate other people. That ain't in there. As a matter of fact, it says, forgive me for my sins as I'm forgiving others. My uncles couldn't do that. They didn't know how to do that. I've learned a way how. Steps 4 through 9 in a 12-step program. Some of you have heard about that. By the way, here's a big secret. The title of this book is When Grace Becomes Amazing. There's true stories in here on how this has got me through really, really tight parts of life and why I'm here today. And the subtitle is A 12-Step Spiritual Journey into Freedom. Most people think 12-step programs are just for people who are addicted to alcohol and other drugs, of which I am. I still am. You can't cure this thing, but you can manage it. Steps 4 through 9, I'm going to tell you how that got me out of the most severe case of hate I've ever been in and what it felt like before and after. So, I'll get back to where I was. Something that happened starting on Wednesday of this past week. On Wednesday of this past week, I was in the morning devotional group, and I know she's online right now because I saw her and her husband, Trish, and her husband, Kevin, online. So what we do there is sign up and take turns reading something, and then we talk about it for a half hour. So what Trish read triggered something in me that is so enormously important, I have to talk about it. And this is with my brother, who lives in Madison. My brother and I aren't immune from what's going on in the country. Okay? We happen to come from the opposite ends of the political spectrum. He's in one population, I'm in the other. That's also very common, which is separating families in this country. Very common. We had a family Zoom call that exploded within, it started getting bad when the first joke was told. It was really not a joke, but then somebody shot back and whatever. It was for my brother's birthday, 80th birthday. The tone of that Zoom call changed and a lot of people left it. So, my brother and I, for the last 7 or 8 years, our relationship wasn't what it was prior to what's happening right now. Here it is. Trish read this, a piece from Megan Watterson. It's called If You See Me Walking Silently. One of the paragraphs in there struck me. I talked about it, and it was this one. May we want to be joyful more than be right. Whatever right means. May we understand that right is too expensive, is too high price to pay. Right is never worth sacrificing life's joys for insisting that I am right, you are wrong. My belief fits, yours doesn't. My belief helps the country, yours takes the country apart. That was on Wednesday. On Thursday, at the same morning devotional, I talked about this because on Thursday morning at about 6 o'clock, I woke up and it came to me in kind of a half dream, half conscious. What's happening between my brother and I is the same thing that happened between my two cousins, or my two uncles, 40 years before. Two brothers, business deal, destroyed the relationships in the family. Two brothers today, no business, political beliefs. Neither of us are as close and connected as we were prior to this 7 or 8 year debate. And then it came to me, I know how to get out of this. I know how to get out of it. Steps 4 through 9 in the 12-step program. I'll tell you what they are. Step 4 is I do a written inventory of what my part in this thing with my brother is about. I write it down on paper. What is it about? And you know what it is? My part is that I have to be right. He has to be wrong for me to be right. And that's false. That's 4. 5 is talk with another person about it. You know who I talked to? The 7 people who were on the morning devotional on Thursday. That's my 5th step. The 6th step is, in the 12-step program, to be entirely ready to let it go, to change the way I'm living. I'm entirely ready to stop hating, start loving, rebuilding relationships. Let's go. The 7th step is to humbly, with humility, ask God to show me how. Give me guidance. Help me with the words. Give me courage to talk with my brother. Step 10 is, step 7. Step 8 is make a list of the people you've harmed. There's one on that list, my brother. And step 9, which is so powerful, is for me to make amends for my part in it. It's not you did this, I did this, you did this, that's worse than what, none of that. My part, I want to change. I want to become more loving and less hating. I was going to do that this afternoon. You know what I'm doing this afternoon? I'm chasing a wounded trumpeter swan. Is it odd or is it God that my brother stopped by my house yesterday? I live out near Cambridge. I said, it's a clear sign. I said to my brother, I said, the way we are now, I like it the old way better. We don't have to argue about this stuff anymore. I'm not going to change your vote. You're not going to change mine. Can we accept that in each other and go back? He said, I would love that. Thank you. He says, I've been thinking about how we're going to do this. And now it's done. My brother is not the hugging type guy. He's just not. Never has been. I have become that. And we did that. It's over. The feeling I had was tremendous. Now I'm going to move to the third and the most powerful. My family, again, is my dog. I've never had a wife, never had children. I've had dogs. They are reliable. They always love. Mine's in the truck right now. It's going, where is he? And anyhow, so it's in this book as well. I met a woman, her name is Wilson. In the book, it's Rachel, that's not her name. We were juniors in college. Met, fell in love. Got our undergraduate degrees. We went into master's programs. She went to law school. I got in a PhD program. So that's 10 years of education right there. In 10 years, we said, we're still in love, so let's go buy a house, raise a family. We bought a farm out by Cambridge, an old house. One day, while I was working on the ceiling, knocking the plaster out, the phone rang, and it said, there was a sobbing woman. She said, Howard, do you know what your girlfriend's been doing with my husband? I don't like that question. And of course, you know, smart-ass Howard, I said, oh, do I know? How many guesses do I get? You know what happened. So the other man and the love of my life left. The resentment, the hatred that I had, particularly for the other man who I'd never met, was enormous. And for her, enormous. What I did for the 4 years after that was to double down on my use of alcohol and other drugs to try to kill the pain. At that point in my life, I was 30 years old. It didn't work anymore, so I was using more of what was killing me. Then I finally got into a program that uses 12 steps, 12-step program. And 4 years later, 8 years after the call came, I was doing my 9th step. I did 1 through 8, and the 9th step with my old girlfriend. And it was at a restaurant up, and it was called the Park Motor Inn at the time. I don't know what it is now, but here, these are 2 2-minute reads. A deeply held resentment is a frightful beast to tangle with. It cannot be tamed by hoping that someday it will tire and quietly slink away. Step 9 is the confluence of the waters of change. It is a place of restitution, reconciliation, healing on the pathway to a new freedom and happiness out of hatred. Resentment is a spiritual malady. It sickens everyone it touches, even the cousins. When Rachel had an affair and left me for another man, my resentment against her and the man grew uncontrollably. I did not know how to, quote unquote, let go and let God. Repeating that slogan many times did not work. The resentment always came back. For 8 years after the phone call, the insidious anger and hatred always found its way back into my consciousness. Acceptance of the reality of what had happened was not in my playbook. I wasn't happy and I wasn't free. I focused on the problem. Why did this happen to me? And who should I blame? The 12 steps led me back to questions that were a bit more evolved. 1, what was my part in what happened? That's steps 4 and 5. 2, am I entirely ready to change and let Spirit guide me? That's steps 6 and 7. And 3, how to choose to respond to what happened? That's steps 8 and 9. The essence of our true selves, Thomas Merton's true self, our spirit, our soul, the God that lives within, the spirit of the God that dwells within is compassion and kindness and love. Hatred and the Spirit of God cannot peacefully coexist within the same container, my body. We are the landlords of that container, and we are responsible for taking the action to evict the tenants that are disturbing the peace within. The more responsibility we take for our lives, the more we can change it. Step 9 is the eviction notice. Our character defects, especially the resentments, must move out. To be happy and at peace, we need to be free from their destructive influence. And then just quickly, the following story is about the power of step 9, how it released my soul sickness, showed me the power of grace and forgiveness, and allowed me to live in a wonderfully new way, happy, joyous, and free. Finally, I'm going to tell you the way I felt when that 2.5-hour lunch with Rachel, after 8 years, after she left, the phone call and she left with the other man. Here's how I felt after 2 hours of talking about my part and revealing things. During that time, I revealed that, you know what, Rachel? That affair crushed me. What I've held secret. Remember, I learned to keep secrets when I was a kid. What I've held secret is that in year 7 of our relationship, I had an affair as well. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to leave. And because I thought, oh, it'll hurt her too much in year 7. Then when her affair came to light, I still concealed it. Why? Because if I told her I'd had an affair, she would have more license to leave. I wanted her to stay. I harbored a lie so that she would make decisions in her life that benefited me. That's selfishness. And other things. Here's how I felt after it was over. I took Rachel's hand in mine and smiled and said, "Thank you, Rachel." She squeezed my hand and tears softly returned to our eyes. This is outside the restaurant on the street. The shift in my heart and mind was palpable. Outside of the restaurant, standing in the afternoon sunshine, we hugged and thanked each other and said goodbye. She walked up the street to her car. I walked the other way to mine. After 8 years of anger and hatred, the feeling of joy and freedom had finally returned to my life. Rachel appeared more beautiful than ever on that day. I was in love with her again. Resentment was no more. The love was not romantic or sexual, or about wishing that we could be together again. It was the love that happens when a pure and deep spiritual connection is made with another human being. It was the miracle of forgiveness delivered on that day through the gifts of grace and step 9. At the time of writing these words, or speaking these words, through the power of the God of my understanding, the program of recovery, and my willingness to welcome them both in my life, I have not found it necessary to use alcohol or other drugs for 41 years. The 8-year resentment I harbored against Rachel and her husband, if they got married, was lifted on the day I made my 9th step amends to Rachel. I was relieved of the bondage of self so that I might better do thy will. And for the past 41 years, that resentment has never returned. It reminds me of the poem by Rumi, a 13th century Sufi poet. It goes something like this. Out beyond the idea of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I will meet you there. And when our souls lie down in that green grass, the world becomes a beautiful place once again. That's a long time ago, the 13th century. They have these issues back then as well. But when our souls make peace, and our souls get along very well, you know why? They came from the same source. The same source. That's why this building here, the people that come here, believe that we came from the same source. And if you believe that, it's so much more difficult to get into the racial prejudices and the gender splits and all the rest of the stuff. We do come from the same material. So, I think I'll end with 2 quotes. The first is Mark Twain, when he wrote, "Forgiveness is the fragrance that a violet sheds onto the heel of the boot that just crushed it." Forgiveness, fragrance that a violet in a field sheds onto the heel of a boot that just crushed it. The second one is attributed to Martin Luther King, and it's this one. Let's see if I can get this one right. Hatred cannot drive out hatred. Only love can do that. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. So, the love and the light that I've been seeking, and I look for, the places where that seems to come together for me, and the people that seem to be seeking the love and the light instead of dwelling in hatred and darkness. I'm looking for them and the place. And I have found that this is the place and you are the people, and that's why I keep coming back here. And I hope you do as well. Thank you. Namaste.